Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Ladies That UX Amsterdam Design Bites. Very glad to see you here today, all of you. Please do share in the comments where you're from, which chapter you're from, perhaps, because we are collaborating today with our amazing friends from Ladies That UX Brighton. Very happy about that. And let's kick it off with a little bit of an introduction. I'm Svetelina, chapter leader at Ladies That UX Amsterdam, and I also want to present to you Maya, who is here with me behind the scenes. She will be looking at your Q&A during this session, and you will see her a little bit later today after our talk with our speaker, Gemma. And speaking of Gemma, today we are here to hear about some practical ways to make your content more accessible. A very, very interesting topic, also a very hot topic, keeping in mind that some EU regulations will be changed in June of this year. So we're very excited to hear more about this and more about what are those things that we can do to be more accessible in our design practices. But for those of you who are perhaps new to the Ladies That UX community, I'm going to give us a small introduction. Ladies That UX Amsterdam and Brighton are only two chapters out of a part of a global network with more than 90 chapters across the whole world. We are quite large and very passionate, obviously, about UX and design. We foster a safe and inclusive space for women in user experience. We connect, collaborate, and thrive through events, including talks like this one, panels, and presentations on UX-related topics. We aim to promote female talent and increase female visibility while being inclusive of all backgrounds, genders, age, race, and expertise. And a little bit about Design Bites Live. This is one of our event types. We currently have two. Ladies That UX Monthly, which is in our an in-person event series that we do in Amsterdam, normally hosted by really nice companies who are able to support us. And Design Bites is our online event series for a bit of more casual conversations and some really nice peer-to-peer value knowledge sharing. This is the space where you can also contribute yourself with sharing some projects that you're working on, gathering some feedback from the community, or starting up a conversation. Why Design Bites? Because these events only happen during lunchtime. So I hope that you have gotten yourself a really nice lunch, and which you're snacking on right now. If you have any questions during this session, over there on the upper left, you can see the Slido link that we have for that. And before further ado, about our speaker, Gemma, I would let her introduce herself in a second. But we're extremely happy to have her. And I won't hold you any longer on this amazing topic. So Gemma, please take it away.
Hello. So I'm Gemma, and I'm a senior product designer based in Cardiff, Wales, United Kingdom. And I've been working in this industry for, I think, about coming up to 12 years now. And throughout my career, I've been able to work on multiple projects through finance, engineering type of platforms, or medical type of platforms. So I kind of had my fair share of seeing all different industries under the UX hat. And while I have been involved in this, accessibility has been something that has been really close and passionate to myself, mainly because I have dyslexia. So I know exactly what it's like when you read content and sometimes it can be overwhelming or difficult and things like that. So that kind of led me down the path of learning more about accessibility and just finding out practical ways in order to make accessibility more easy to implement for designers and developers and pretty much just companies in general. So this is what this talk is going to be about today. It's not going to go into too much depth about accessibility because it is a huge topic and it is an overwhelming topic. So I'm going to keep this very high level and very simple and just give you practical tips in order to make content or any of your designs accessible going forward. Right. So what is web accessibility? Well, web accessibility is to ensure that digital content can be designed and developed to be used by all people, regardless of their disability or age or any service environment that they may be experiencing. Now, this is just about web accessibility. You may think about accessibility in the world, and that's things like ramps for people with wheelchair uses, or just when you're crossing the road, the signs and signals like that. That's also accessibility, but today we're specifically concentrating on web accessibility. So just to give you some stats, obviously I'm UK based, so these stats are applicable to the UK, but I do have some stats which cover the whole world as well. So typically in the UK, there's about 1 in 5 people who have some form of disability. And across the world, that is about 1 billion people. And there are different kinds of disabilities that some people may experience. And here's just a few pretty much. So about 1 in 25 people are blind or visually impaired. So they wear glasses or they have some other kind of equipment to help them. About 1 in 12 men are actually colorblind, and this isn't just for men, it also affects women and everyone else as well. So yeah, colorblindness is a thing. 1 in 10 people have dyslexia. Like I said, I'm one of those people. And 1 in 11 people are aged about 65 and over, but by the year of 2050, that's probably going to be about 1 in 6 because the generation are living longer. We're living a lot longer, the generation's getting older, and with age comes some impairments or disabilities. But 80% of disabilities are actually invisible, unless you see somebody wearing glasses or they openly talk about being dyslexic and stuff like that. So here's just some of the main things that are included in just some disabilities. So you've got your vision, which is like you've got blind or low vision, or somebody could be colorblind. There's obviously hearing, so they could be completely deaf or just hard of hearing. Physical or motor skills, meaning movement and talking. So whether that's fine control or slow motion. And then you got your cognitive and neurological impairments as well. And this could be like learning difficulties or things like dyslexia or ADHD, all those type of things. And all this stuff is around decision making as well. So these are all the things that we need to include when we're thinking about designing content or just designing in general for the web. So why am I so passionate about this topic? Well, it turns out that about 70% of digital content is not accessible. Now, if you think about the stat at the beginning where I said about 1 billion people across the world have some form of impairments, 70% of this content is not accessible to them. And this usually forms into about 80% of new sites that hit a live environment. They are the big ones that are usually not accessible. About 2 out of 3 e-commerce websites, and we live in the digital age now where you pretty much do all your shopping online, I can guarantee you, especially since the pandemic. So yeah, 2 out of 3 e-commerce websites are not accessible. And then that means that 92% of disabled customers with accessibility needs will leave a website if they think it's difficult to use. So you've already lost a huge amount of customer base. 82% of customers with accessibility needs will want to spend more time on a website if they were more accessible. So if the website was more accessible, more people will want to stay on it. And it turns out about 95% of health professionals recommend that we adapt our text on the web for customers with dyslexia or other impairments. So there's a huge misconception about accessibility. And when we talk about accessibility, people just think that we are really targeting a niche user group who have disabilities. And that's not true. Turns out that if you design for somebody with impairments, it benefits everyone else. And a simple explanation of this, if there's any parents out there, they will guarantee you tell you that they do everything one-handed, because the majority of the time they're holding their infant in their other arm, so they only have one hand free. So if you designed a website that could be used with one hand, or a device with one hand, then you're designing for people with accessible needs as well. So this is how different people can benefit from these type of limitations as well. Another one would be, let's say you're currently using your phone and you're on really low internet connection and the website's taking forever to load. People will drop off at that point because they don't want to experience that lag. But if that website was accessible and made to be able to use just by reading it, or just by loading up the HTML, that's still usable to that person. So that person will be able to have some sort of experience straight away. So even though you've designed something which is like lovely and flash, if it's able to be viewed on a slow connection and it just loads the HTML, then that's useful for people as well who have disabilities and they turn off all the animations and stuff like that. They still get the same experience and it's accessible to all. Like I said, sometimes exclusion is situational. So like I said about internet connection, another thing might be that you're in a really loud crowd or environment and you're trying to check a video. If there's subtitles on that video, that's perfect because you don't need to hear the content, you can read the content and things like that. So sometimes we have situational exclusion and it's not just a permanent exclusion. But when you design for permanent exclusions, you're benefiting people with situational exclusions. So what is web accessibility? So if you've seen anything right now about the new regulation that's coming out, the European Accessibility Act, it's due to come into effect in June, and it's due to affect the whole of Europe. And even though the UK is not in Europe anymore, sadly, it still does affect the UK as well, because if you're operating in the EU, so if you're selling services and stuff like that, your product also has to meet these regulations as well. So to break it down, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which you usually hear of WCAG, WCAG is what people call it, breaks down accessibility into four main principles, and that is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Now, when you break it down like this, it's a lot more easy to understand. So perceivable just means, can I consume my content on my site in different ways, such as having closed captions on a video, for example? Operable, can the site function without causing confusion, with or without the use of a mouse? Understandable, can a user understand how the interface functions and understand the information on the website? And robust, so can different assistive technologies such as screen readers understand and navigate the website? That's a basic understanding of those four main principles. So with those principles in mind, how can we make online content accessible? So I'm going to go through a few simple examples of how you can make your content slightly more accessible to people. And the biggest one with video content is obviously subtitles. So you may see this a lot right now popping up on Instagram or TikTok when you're scrolling through. The majority of people these days actually watch video content without audio. So in order to get your message across to people, using subtitles is a very good way to do that, because it's telling people what's going on in the video, what people are saying, and they can get an understanding straight away. Again, this helps people out who are deaf or hard of hearing, but it also helps out people in a situational environment. Let's say somebody's on public transport and they don't want to annoy everyone else around them. They can still enjoy their content even though they've forgotten their headphones that day, and they can still consume that content. Color contrast. So this one is a biggie for designers. When you're designing for the web, we got to make sure that our color contrast is accessible, and there's multiple ways that we can check that. These days, especially with our design software, Figma's just released a new tool right now where you can check color contrasts in Figma, so you'll know before it hits the live environment. But the general gist is just to make sure that whatever text is on top of a background is easy to read, so the color contrast is visible. So for example here, the yellow background with the black text, that's accessible, it has color contrast. And the one below which says low visibility, those colors are mainly the same kind of colors. If somebody has color blindness, they could get mixed up with these colors, they may not be able to see the words. So having that color contrast between your background and your foreground really gives that information readability and reduces eye strain as well. Typography, or fonts, as more commonly known. So yeah, typography again is a critical component for accessibility. We need to make sure that the fonts we choose are easy to read and they're practical and they help people who have cognitive impairments. So Comic Sans is a perfect example of this. It's really good for young people or people with dyslexia. It's quite easy to read, but that doesn't mean we have to put it everywhere, all on the web. We can easily go for typography such as Verdana or Helvetica. Again, these fonts are easy to read. They're sans serif fonts, so they don't have any little flicks going off them, and they're really easy to see the difference in some words. So it just makes that easy for those people to read and really reduces eye strain for the users as well. Language. So plain language. So plain language just means that you don't overcomplicate your content with jargon or unorganized structure of your content. So making sure that you're using headings and paragraphs to split up that content to make sure it's really easy to read and really easy to scan through. The reason why we say not to really fill it with jargon is because, or acronyms is another one, is because not everyone understands an acronym. So if you're going to use an acronym, that's okay to use, but just make sure that you put the full acronym of what is called first, and then you can continue through that text and to use that acronym. You just need to make clear somewhere what that acronym means. So making sure that that language is super clear to those users. And this is because content now is super accessible across the world and nobody speaks the same language. We all have individual languages, and yeah, so if we make sure our content is written for people with, I think it's a reading ability of the age of, I'm going to say 12, I think it is. So having that type of language out there makes that content super easy to read, and yeah, they can scan that text relatively easy. So plain language is the best way to do that. So flashing and trigger warnings. You may see this quite a lot, and in the digital age right now, especially with new ways of doing content online, you can flash things and you can have effects on your websites which are over animations and things like that. And yet they do look cool and some of them are useful, but they can actually cause seizures in people. And there's other things as well, which when we say a trigger warning, this could be a reaction to seeing some content which may be triggering for people. So if you're going to have flashing content, you need to have a warning on it just to say, hey, by the way, this has flashing content. You might have seen this while browsing online. And if it's on a website, then you should have the ability to turn off any of the animations, so a little pause button somewhere, because you don't want to trigger seizures in people, or at least warn them that that's a potential by consuming your content. Alternative text for images. So I believe that this is the one that gets missed quite a lot, and that's whenever your images are online, whether that's on your website, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, we put up a nice image and we just expect people to be able to see that image and know exactly what it means. But not everyone has that ability to see it. People with low vision or people are blind, they don't get to consume that content unless we add in some alt text. So alt text is short for alternative text. And basically, in your content editor, so like on a website, in the back end, there should be like a little alt tag by the image. You just write a description in there to tell you exactly what it is. Usually, we'll have stuff like this as soon as we upload an image. It'll be like, image, we don't want that. A screen reader will actually read that out to somebody. So when they're consuming content, they will actually hear image underscore 5844792.png. That's not useful to anyone. They don't know what that is. But if you put the alt text in and call it something like cute cat, that gives context to that image and it gives an understanding to that individual as well. So they're able to understand what those images are and kind of consume them as well, but just in a different way. Another one as well would be accessible communication. So I bet you the majority of you all now work remote. So if you're communicating to people through things like Slack or anything like that, just make sure that you use a way of communicating to people in different ways. So people love emojis, but not everyone understands emojis. So just make sure there's a common understanding of everything. Make sure that when people are in meetings that they're able to see you, or you're able to put on captions of the video and the presentation. Or some people just don't want to be on meetings because it's overwhelming for them, so maybe just give them a summary in Slack so they can just go and read it later. So just thinking about things like that in order to talk to people in different ways. Like I said, with the new law coming out soon, we're going to need some policies and procedures. So we're going to have to make sure that all of these are now in place regarding people's abilities and stuff like that. So just making sure that our workplaces cover those procedures as well, and having accessibility statements on our website. So if anyone needs it, it's there and they can go see it. And then when you're handing over designs or anything to developers, make sure that everything is documented for them so they understand what type of stuff they need to cover. So if there's anything with alt text, just make sure you cover stuff and explain what the image is for them. Making sure that if there's anything like PDFs online, they're able to download them, or that PDF is able to be read by a screen reader and things like that. So there's different ways that we can consume that content, or we could maybe just make a video for that content instead. And then this goes across to everyone else in your business. So accessibility is not a designer's problem and is not a developer's problem. It's actually a company-wide thing that we all should be taking into consideration, and it should be something which is throughout our organization. So just making sure that everyone understands what accessibility is, the best practices, making sure that it's implemented within the work formats that we're doing, and just making sure that you're in an inclusive work environment as well, and making sure that we're providing resources and support and communicating with our colleagues. When we're in the development cycle, make sure everyone understands the main goal, and maybe have a checklist as well to mark off exactly what needs to be done and how we're going to do it. We'll skip this one because this is especially for workplaces, but yeah, if you were in a workplace environment and people needed physical accommodations, just making sure that we have that there for them as well. And again, talking within the workplace as well, so just making sure that people have the ability to speak about accessibility, have ways of implementing that across different groups, making sure that we advocate for it within everything that we do as well, because like I said, is everyone's duty to make sure inclusivity and accessibility is throughout the business and not just in our actual delivery work, but also throughout everywhere else as well with our procedures and policies. So accommodating for accessible needs not only benefits individuals with accessibilities, but it also benefits everyone. So here's to a more inclusive environment. And just to let you know as well, if you are new to accessibility and you just want more tips on how to implement this, especially from a designer perspective, I do have an accessibility checklist. It's completely free. You can just download it. It's a PDF. And yeah, there's the link there, which you can go grab it. But it's just a practical way, and it gives you just quick little checklists to make sure what you need to check off in the different rules that they set out. And that's it. Any questions?
Oh, that was an awesome talk. Thank you so much, Gemma. I think we're going to give a couple of minutes for people to gather their thoughts on what they want to ask you. Maya is going to keep an eye on that. Everybody, ask your questions. We are also a little bit delayed with the stream, so we're going to give them some time. In the meantime, though, you did mention the use of subtitles, for example, and the use of other very interesting, useful accessibility things that we can definitely implement in our UX designs. And I do believe those are also helping not only people who require accessibility, but everybody pretty much.
Pretty
And
much.
we've heard also about the term temporary disability.
Yeah.
Have you also experienced some cases where you did need to accommodate for that?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ones would be slow internet connection. And I personally experienced this myself one day where I was in the Apple store and I thought it'd be funny to put my own website on the Apple screen. Turns out that their internet was super slow and my website wouldn't load. And it turns out it's because I had like a bunch of animations and things everywhere. So I thought, well, if people can't access it in like an environment like that, then they must be having issues as well. I have super fast internet at home. Not everyone has that ability. So I had to go back and make sure that my website was accessible for slow internet speeds. And that's just by like reducing sizes of my images, reducing the animations that were going on, and just making sure that the HTML will load up without like the CSS in the background. So yeah, that's just making sure at least you'll be able to read the page, even though the page doesn't look fancy and nice.
Right. And that, of course, could also require some more closer collaboration with the developers.
Yeah.
Do you have tips for that of how to approach this, making the process a bit smoother?
Yeah, so it does depend on what type of environment you work in. An agile environment is a perfect way, and it's all about getting the developers into the design process and talking to them, not just handing stuff over at the end. So explain to them exactly what you want to achieve in this, and they can give you a lot of tips on how to like reduce load times and stuff like that. Like that's their specialty, that's their area. So making sure that you're having conversations with them as much as possible, then also having conversations with them about, hey, we need to make sure that we have our alt text in. We need to make sure that this website is easy to navigate without the use of a mouse. I didn't really touch too much on it, but if you go on any website and you press your tab key on your keyboard, you should be able to logically navigate through the website and all the links. But that is dependent on how it's been structured in the code itself. So even though it looks like in the design that it would follow a natural pattern, the development team will need to know the natural pattern. So having that conversation with them so they know if somebody was going to navigate through their website without a mouse and they press the tab key, it would highlight these links in this order.
Amazing. I do believe we can now move on to some questions from the audience. Everybody, keep on questioning. Keep on questioning. Maya will read them all.
Thank you so much, Gemma, for your talk. I will start off with the first question that we received from Lucy. So she said, I've heard of APCA, so Accessible Perceptual Contrast Algorithm, for checking color contrast, and she's just wondering what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so there's a certain rule that we should be meeting. I think it's like a 3.1 ratio. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, to be honest with you. But if you use a color contrast checker, and there's loads online that you can just, when you pick two colors, let's say your background color and your foreground color, you just give the website the hex codes, and they will tell you whether it passes or fails. It's really simple, and they'll tell you whether it passes on like AAA or AA. AA is the one that we always want to go for. AAA is really difficult. I didn't touch on the different A's and things in this because it's really in depth. But essentially, yeah, web content accessibility guidelines have two separate guidelines. One is AA, one is AAA. AAA is super difficult to achieve on everything because that's literally adding in things like sign language into videos and stuff like that. But AA just means that you're covering some accessible features. So when we're covering accessibility, we don't want to make it perfect because that's unachievable. You're never going to make it perfect. But at least having different options is enough. So like I said, with video content, as long as you're just not relying on audio and you also have subtitles, you're designing or giving content to more than one user, or somebody with visual aids. So it's just thinking about it that way. It will never ever be perfect, and it will never ever tick every single box. But the more we do, and the more that we achieve, the better the experiences will become.
Nice, thank you. So the next question was about the IAAP CAP certifications. So that is the International Association of Accessibility Professionals certification. If you know anything about it, if you have any insights about it.
I
It was an
personally,
open general question.
I personally have no accreditations. Everything I've learned is literally by myself, and just I've done some like courses here and there, but I'm not too sure about that, to be honest with you.
And you know, this is what we're all about at Ladies That UX, learning from each other, because sometimes you gotta just discover by yourself. Because sometimes our topics are so new as well that there's not enough content out there and not enough to learn from each other. So thank you for joining today with this awesome talk to teach us a few things.
Yeah. So now is a question about the public sector in the UK. So there are clear risks for companies who sell to the public sector in the UK, as they must comply with WCAG 2.2 AA.
Yeah.
What risks can you see for commercial?
So I think the risks are actually, I think the best way to think about it is to not think about risk. A lot of people think about accessibility as a tick box and just something that they should do in order to not get sued. And that's very typical way of thinking. And the point of accessibility, it's not about rules and regulations and about fines and things like that. It's about whether or not your content is accessible to users. So think about it in a way of, if you meet accessibility guidelines, more users can use your website. So your company makes more money. Like, that's the way to think about it in the end. It's not so much the rules and regulations that come around it, it's that, is my site accessible? Can it be used by X amount of people? Great. I have more access to users, and more users meaning people will buy more and stuff like that. So that's the best way to think about it, not so much what's the rules and fines that's going to come with it.
Yeah, of course. So the next question is about writing accessible content. Do you know of any resources for languages to avoid that can be particularly alienating for individuals, or any encouraged language?
So languages is literally based on where you are. Obviously, in the UK, we have English. I'm in Wales, so I also have to regulate to the Welsh language as well. And even though the Welsh language is not that well known across the UK, we still have to abide by it. It's not so much the language itself, it's more the writing age that you're writing for. So, like I said, just making sure that your content is understandable by somebody who's 12 years old. And that's because that, let's say, well, the UK is multicultural. Majority of people do understand English, but they may not understand Shakespeare English. And that's okay. So as long as we're not writing content in Shakespeare English, and we are writing it in a way that a 12-year-old can understand, that information then will be accessible to people whose first language is not English, but they get a general gist and understanding of that.
I thought it was amazing when you actually mentioned about the emojis. That is a great example of what we experience sometimes, that using visual language like emojis can actually mean very different things also per generation that's looking at it.
Yeah, we have that a lot. Like in work, depending on who you are, a thumbs up could mean great, you're doing a good job to us millennials, and then to a Gen Z, it's like you're being really passive aggressive. So sometimes it's just a case of being like, oh, this is what I mean, and it's okay to use emojis, but just explain what you're trying to get across as well.
Yeah. And just to follow up on the previous question, is there anything that you do in particular to confirm or check that the writing that you use in your design actually is accessible or, is for a level of a 12-year-old?
One of the biggest ones is usability testing. I know not everyone likes to hear that, but yeah, usability testing is the best way to see if your designs are accessible to multiple different people. And that's because as you can test with people with different ages, different backgrounds, different understanding, different economic backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, that's the best way to test and get an accurate understanding of whether or not your content is being understood by people. Another way, obviously, is AI. We can ask AI and run it through AI and see it that way. I'm not against AI. I really like AI. I use it a lot myself. But yeah, don't rely solely on it. It's a way of being like, okay, I can get a general understanding, but the real answer you will get is by real people.
Right. I think like what we notice is a bit of the biggest danger with AI in our field is be critical of
Yeah.
what you're receiving and the data that you're receiving from
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah, it's a good sounding board, especially when you're on your own and you just want to just see, or would this be understandable by a person of 12? Like that's the prompt you could give it. It'll give you some sort of indication, maybe a way of rewriting it, but yeah, unless you sit down with an actual 12-year-old and get them to read your content, or multiple 12-year-olds, or that's when you're going to really understand, because AI is not a human, they're just learning from humans. So yeah, the real understanding would come from real people.
Of course. All right, so we have a few more questions. So someone asked, how can designers ensure they're considering all types of permanent disabilities when building digital products?
So the main things would just be to look at those 4 main principles. And you haven't got to tick everything off, but just making sure that you... Oh, sorry. 1 second.
This happens. We are alive, people. We are alive. This is great. I hope we see a doggo. I hope we see a doggo.
Yeah.
Sorry, he doesn't like the postman. So there you go. He is very protective. He's a Labrador. Yeah, so what was I saying? What was
about how to ensure you're considering all types of
Oh.
permanent disabilities, and you were saying to go through the 4 steps.
Yeah, so go through the 4 main principles and just making sure that you're covering off certain things, like making sure your color contrast is checked, making sure that your website is easy to navigate, like I said, and that covers off perceivable, operable, understandable. And then robust would obviously be just have a little test for screen readers. I can guarantee you, if you have a Mac, you have a built-in screen reader for free. If you have a Windows, you have a built-in screen reader for free. If you have an iPhone, you have a built-in screen reader for free. So there are ways that we can test, and I know people tend to put that off because they think we have to go buy a fancy technology or a fancy screen reader. You don't. It's literally on your machines and just running it through those tests. But then you'd also get a true understanding of that experience that somebody else is experiencing who have some sort of impairment. So trust me, when you start putting your screen reader on and you're navigating a website, you will feel the frustration and understand why content is not accessible. And then you'll understand how to make that content accessible because you're experiencing it.
I think also a very low key way to do this is grab one of these and put it on your screen to see how bad your design becomes when someone is visually impaired.
Yep. And if you wear glasses, take your glasses off and just have a look.
Very low cost methods of
Literally.
accessibility. Nice. So next question is about, what is your advice for beginners in UX design who want to prioritize accessibility from day one? So maybe like the basic checklist.
Yep, so the basic checklist would be to download my my accessibility checklist because it literally runs through things like that you can check off, and it just makes sure that your fonts are easy to read and making sure that your color contrast is up to scratch and stuff like that. It's once you get into it, it's actually really easy to achieve. It's more than of an educational piece that you become the expert in it, and then you are the ones who have to inform everyone else. You kind of end up doing that quite a lot. Is like making sure then when you sit down with the development team, reasons why things need to be this way, and making sure that you are the advocate for those people.
Yeah, nice. And the last question that we have submitted was, in your experience, what are the biggest accessibility gaps that still need urgent attention?
It would be the screen readers, because believe it or not, even though they are installed on our machines, people don't know that, and it's something that gets completely missed when it goes through quality assurance QA, and that's mainly because there's no processes or procedures to check that. You can write automated tests if you're a QA engineer, but those automated tests don't pick up everything. But just simply turn on a screen reader and tap into that website, you will see things that are super easy to change, like the alt text, for instance, on an image. When it starts reading out MIG_123, you're like, okay, this is a nightmare now. So when you start understanding that, I think that's when it really starts to tick in. And yeah, I would just encourage you to always, when you're checking work that has been done by a developer, just pass it through a screen reader. It takes seconds.
And do you think that that's something that will become required when the Act comes into place in June? So through the QA process?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because that's the way that people who are visually impaired will navigate the website. If close your eyes and try and navigate now without your mouse and see what happens. And that's a real experience for people who are visually impaired. So it is going to be something that we're going to need to pay more close attention to, because we're so used to the web world being visual, and it is a great place to be visual. But when you don't have that ability to see, that's when we run into some problems. So yeah, screen readers are brilliant, and they give good experiences to people who are visually impaired, but we need to make sure that we're designing for those screen readers.
Awesome.
Of course.
Thank you for the super insightful Q&A as well. Also, great questions, everybody.
Yeah, really.
There's one more question that just came in. Yeah.
One more question.
And then I have one as well afterwards.
Okay.
But yeah, the question that just came in is, do you think AI could help personalize accessibility features based on individual disability needs? And if yes, how close are we to that future?
You know what? This came up in a conversation the other day in work. We weren't talking about it from an accessibility perspective. We were talking about it from a personalization perspective. And yeah, I do think it is achievable right now with the current AI. No, because it's still learning. It's just machine learning, and it's learning from us. But I think the more knowledge is going to feed in, and the more people that feed into it. So again, this is another thing that people are afraid of, giving information to the AI, but that AI is only going to learn from us humans. So the more humans that use it with all different abilities, the more it's going to learn those edge cases. So in order for it to work for us to solve those edge cases, we need people with edge cases to use it. So if you have any impairment, whether you're dyslexic like me, it's great. It's learning all my weird ways of spelling stuff for me. and then gives me the real words back. But it'll only know that because it's understood me as a person, and it knows that I have dyslexia, so it looks out for those things. So yeah, the more people that use AI and the more people with disabilities use it, the more it's going to learn. Right now, it's a little bit biased, I think, because not that, it's mainly about like the techies who's using it. But when we start getting into the more general public using it, and this is more like integrated into society a bit more, I think that's when we really start to see the power of it.
Nice. Yeah, and I guess one last question is, what do you think would be like the biggest challenge for companies when the Accessibility Act comes into play?
Leaving it too late. I think that's the biggest problem that people are going to face. I think people are thinking, it's in June, it's ages away. It's not. It's going to come up like a flash. And if code isn't written in an accessible way, it requires a rewrite of code, which is time and money. So doing audits now, making sure that those little changes can be implemented as quick as possible, because what the law is going to do, it's more like the GDPR rules. So remember when GDPR came out, it wasn't a case of this is the rules and this is it, you get fined. It was more of, are you taking these steps to ensure that people's data is protected? You don't have to be perfect about it. Are you taking steps? And that's the same with this act as well. Are you taking steps? But if you leave it up until the last minute and you haven't taken any steps, I think then you're going to start to see some issues. But I think as long as you're thinking about it now and slowly rolling out those changes, even if it's just adding some alt text to your images, or making sure that your text is easy to read, just making sure that your color contrast is there, doing these little individual changes will make it less overwhelming for when that act does actually come in, and then maybe you get like a letter to the door saying, oh, you need to change all these things.
Small baby steps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Well, on that note, I would actually like to invite our amazing Fiona from Ladies That UX Brighton, who's also here and behind the scenes with us. Hi, Fiona.
Hello. Gemma, thank you so much for the fantastic presentation. It was super interesting.
Thank you.
And as you might have noticed, I have a problem with my voice, which is actually kind of a disability as well, like it's an ongoing issue. So apologies for that. And yeah, Svetlina and Maya, thank you so much. It was a great session. And yeah, I just wanted to come on and also let everyone know about the upcoming Talk UX conference, which is the Ladies That UX International Conference, which is happening in Brighton, UK on the 17th and 18th of September. So you can follow Ladies That UX Brighton using the fantastic QR code, which Svetlina and Maya have kindly put up on there. And then also on that page, you can register your interest in attending the conference, which is you sign up for Luma. And then as soon as tickets become available, then we will let you all know that they are there. So I anticipate tickets will go on sale at affordable prices in May.
Cool.
And we're still asking for speakers and facilitators too. So the details for that are also on the same page. The deadline for that is the 15th of May. So you've got some time, and we really want to hear from people in our community, and especially if you're thinking about using design for doing good. So accessibility definitely falls into that particular bracket.
Gemma, this is not a hint, but it also
I'd love to. I'd love to facilitate a workshop like that. That'd be awesome.
Love it. Thank you so much, Fiona, also for partnering with us for this event. We managed to get, I believe, 43 visitors live today. So this is
great.
so cool. Thank you, everyone from Ladies That UX Amsterdam and Brighton, and also other people who are not yet community members. Please do follow, subscribe, and everything else. This is our link for Amsterdam. We would be very glad to have you. We have regular online events like this one, We tried our best to do it every month, so stay tuned. And our next in-person event is on the 23rd of May, which got launched
April.
while we were speaking here. Oh, sorry, 23rd of April. See? 23rd of April, everybody, not May, April. It launched as we were talking here, so go ahead and grab your tickets in Eventbrite. We would also love to get your opinions and feedback about this session. If you have any ideas or anything you'd like to share with the team, follow us right there. There is a link to a form that you can fill in or just DM us. We're approachable. And on that note, thank you all for joining us and hope to see you very soon again at Design Bites or at the Ladies the UX. Oh, UX Talk. UX Talk. Sorry, I'm really bad at this today. I don't know.
Absolutely not. You're amazing. Correct it is. Thank you so much.
See you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Gemma.